All right, so here we go. And I am kind of fangirling today because I have such a baddie on the podcast today. Today, we are bringing in, as you heard, Sara Gross. And Sara is a phenom. She's done so many things, if you've heard, but today we're going to dive into really the aspect of entrepreneurship, of her bringing to life this company, this media company that is so amazingly successful. And I love it because of the education that you guys give, but I also love the community and what it's done for women. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you, Heather. I love that. Thank you for the amazing intro. I mean, I feel like I need to live up to all the
uh,
hype that you've created.
you will. I know. Before we hit record, I told Sara that she's like a super baller, and and I think maybe that should go on your bio because
Bio.
I did read in there that you have the superpowers of bootstrapping and getting the best out of people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so good. What a good superpower to have. But yeah, being a baller is right up there underneath your name. And so what I really want to talk about is like, you've come from this background of, Ph.D. in women's history, and then got, like this triathlon history, which as a triathlete myself, to even fathom getting to Kona, yet alone winning Ironman championships. Like, come on, Sara. And then like your involvement as presenter, writer, producer for the Women's Sports Network, like, oh my gosh, you're living a Heather dream. And I have to tell you too, before we start talking about entrepreneurship, I was going to start a podcast with my bestie, and it was going to be the super average triathlete, just so you know.
Oh, amazing. And sometimes the super average triathlete has the best wisdom, right? You know what really goes on in the trenches.
Or maybe the best stories.
True.
We're out there longer. We have better stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about, like, you've brought this background of these incredible feats as a woman, as a person, let's say. And then you started 6 years ago this Feisty media company.
Hmm.
Was the vision of Feisty what it is today?
Yes and no is actually the answer to that question. So actually this is you're starting on a really good point here, right? And I think this would be something I would suggest for anyone who has goals or anyone who's an entrepreneur, that
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, absolutely, Feisty is exactly what I wanted it to be in terms of our overall mission and goals.
Okay.
Right. So that has never shifted. From the beginning, I said I wanted to create an empowering culture for women in sport. That was
Mm-hmm.
my goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which seems crazy, right? Like how do you shift culture? How do you change culture? And how do you make a culture that's more empowering? But really the answer to that for me was through media. And that's why I started with podcasting and other types of media. But as you could tell, like the answer to that question can come in a multitude of ways. Right. Like, so for example, when I first started, I didn't really necessarily think, okay, we're going to educate women in online courses, right? Or I didn't necessarily think
Sure.
we're going to help women navigate menopause. These are not things I was thinking in 2017, right? What I was thinking is like, how do we change the culture? How do we take this big kind of really messy, very hard to understand and define goal and make it into something practical? Right. So that
Mm-hmm.
was just about starting where we are. We started with one podcast called IRONMAN and then another one called If We Were Riding in the triathlon space. And that's because I was a triathlete. I had contacts in that space to have a small amount of sponsorship as we got rolling. And I also knew people who could be really good hosts and things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
that was just that was the drop, like a drip in a huge bucket of like how we changed the culture.
Yeah, cool. Was it you and someone else, or was this you
It
in the
was
very
me.
beginning? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely me in the beginning. I did work on a project with someone else who helped. We built Dr. Stacy Sims brand
Mm-hmm.
kind of for 2.5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a project that I did with another person. So like we partnered on that, and of course I partnered with Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big learning for us. But and now I have now I'm so, oh my gosh, I love working with other people. So it's just been so great to be able to continuously build the team, So
Sure.
now,
Yeah.
I've got, we're getting close to 7 people full-time plus a handful of contractors. So, and I love having all of those people around to like bounce ideas off, or who of course have different expertise.
Uh-huh.
That's exactly what I need. So yeah, so technically just me to start, but definitely not just me.
Yeah. Well, I can say just from experience of launching something on your own, there's so much to learn.
Hmm.
And you put yourself out there and you make incredible connections with people. And that is how you learn. And you learn really what you like, what you want more of.
Yeah,
And then sometimes it's a surprise of like, no, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
I don't think I like that part of it. But
yeah.
um, I I think that when as an outsider,
Mhm.
looking at what you guys put out, it looks like a massive team. It looks like you have a huge team
Right.
because there's incredible content.
Mhm.
And it's also like a party of, within the education, like you're not afraid of having fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's part of my ethos, right? Like there has to be fun.
Yes.
I remember even we did one time, we were having a staff meeting, like an all teams meeting, and we were going around saying what we value, or what we value about the team. And one of the things I said was like joy and fun is very
Mhm.
important to me. And everybody was like, yeah, yeah, we can see that. Like that's one of the central guiding themes of our team, which I hope to be able to keep, you know, forever.
It radiates for
Right.
sure. I've seen you guys at Kona. As I was there spectating and cheering on people, I've seen the party.
Amazing.
And I've always been like, I want in on that party. That's so fun.
Yeah. And I also I would say it also as like a counterpoint to the party, it also can get very uncomfortable, right? At
Okay.
certain times. So that same team that has like embraced the party, and that it's not necessarily like that all the time, and it's not the darkness isn't necessarily what you think it's going to be, right? Like the
Mm,
challenges aren't necessarily like because somebody said something shitty about your company online, or because you're losing money, or because, anything that you might think, but
mhm.
actually sometimes because there's it's the hardship almost of not knowing is
Okay.
what makes it the most difficult, I think. So sometimes when we're this is the bootstrapping thing, right? Like you're trying to make the best decisions all the time that are
Uh-huh.
both going to stick with where you're headed as a company, but also make money, also stick with your vision.
Mhm,
And sometimes you just don't know. And people are very uncomfortable when you don't know
mhm,
something, right? So
mhm.
me as a leader, when I don't know what the best decision is, or when the next layer is down, when they don't know what to do and I can't necessarily help them. So I think that there's a level at which, in order to have that kind of party side, you also have to have a group of people who are very comfortable not knowing, or being in the unknown, or being unsure exactly what they're going to be working on the next
Okay.
week, right?
Yeah.
Which is
That
difficult for a lot of people.
yes, yes, that flexibility isn't hardwired in everybody,
Mhm.
for sure.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. And then, yeah, go ahead.
you saying that reminds me just of social media. Like when
Mm,
you say it's not always a party, right?
mhm, mhm.
We're seeing such good stuff. Good, 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 good.
Right.
So
Oh, good.
we're not seeing the behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
that is within every organization, within everything that is happening. Has there been a challenge that made you question whether this is something you wanted to continue? Has there been anything like that to that depth?
Yep.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. For
Okay.
sure. So,
Okay.
I could say, what can I say? Like maybe a year and a half ago now. It's December. Yeah, about a year and a half ago. I had a business partner decide that she was leaving and took like a huge amount of assets
Okay.
with her. And I
Okay.
had to decide whether I was going to take legal action against that person.
That's tough.
Um, and that's rough when you're like working so closely with someone
Hmm.
and you have a contract that says that they can't do what they've just done,
Hmm.
but they're willing to break the contract, and they're willing to do that just on the hopes that you're not going to pursue something legal. And so I had to go through that entire process of, first of all, processing like what that was and why that person might be doing it, have empathy for her to understand why she might do something like that, but then
Hmm.
um also to decide what we were going to do. Am I going to spend energy on like pursuing legal action, or am I going to spend energy on building the business? And ultimately, I just decided we were going to focus on building the business, but it doesn't feel good, and it's one
For
of those things
sure.
that, right, you think, what did I do wrong? Like, what did I not communicate? How were we not valuable? How is Feisty not valuable enough as a partner
Mhm.
in this situation? Like, why figuring out why someone would do that is it's a process for sure.
I imagine so. Yeah. And does it at this point in time, is as painful as that process was, is it now something that's made you a little more resilient?
Yes, for sure. For sure. I definitely would, looking back, I think I learned a lot of things. So I think that there are things that I would see coming very quickly that I could head off that I didn't really realize back then that, now I would say, okay, some of the things that were being said and discussed at the time, I'm like, "Ooh, I probably should have seen that coming."
Aha. Yeah. Yeah. That's really brilliant to hear though, because I
Mhm.
think that that's it comes in all forms for everybody in business.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a good reminder too. It's a good reminder to take those hits as learning,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. And it didn't wreck you, and you're stronger,
No.
and you're still producing such incredible stuff. That flip that.
Mhm.
So, on the head of the biggest nightmare that you guys possibly have faced, what are some of the podium,
The podium
the
moments.
podium moments for Feisty? Like what stuck out as like, damn, we did that.
Yeah. Okay, there's a couple from this year, excuse me, at least maybe three, maybe I'd pull out three from this
Woo,
year.
top three.
Yeah, all the two are like pretty similar, but
Okay.
the first one is when we decided we were gonna start to build an online course platform, right? Not just like we're doing one online course and see how it goes. No, we're doing a whole platform. Right? And so and so we built the first course starting in January and we launched it in April, and it's called Fueled.
Mhm,
And it's a nutrition course for active women, and it essentially teaches you the tools that you need to decide on your fueling program or your diet plan, instead of this approach of like so many problematic diet programs that are like prescriptive, like
mhm,
someone who doesn't even know you is telling you what to eat, and it's typically wrong. It's
mhm,
typically like fast or intermittent fasting or low carbs or whatever else, but they don't even know your activity level or anything else. So this was
mhm,
kind of designed to help women make their own decisions and understand the science about their bodies. And so, but it was like a bumpy road creating this because we just thought, oh, we'll make an online course, it'll be fine. But actually, it's pretty hard to make an online course.
it certainly
Um,
is.
yes. And so when we launched I remember the day that we launched it, it was kind of a make or break because it was like our audience is they're either going to buy courses from us or they're not. And we're going to find out on this day whether we've set the stage of whether we have trust of the people who are in our audience
Mm,
to say, yes, I want to be educated by these people. And we thought that we had that, but you don't know until you know, right? So the day that with the course launched, that was when we knew, like, okay, people like we've provided enough value through the podcast and through the other things that we're doing that we have developed that trust, and people do realize that we're going to bring in the best experts, that we've vetted the brands we're working with. And so we sold, we hit our actually we hit more than our goals of sales, and we had to shut down the sale because I didn't want too many people in that first cohort of the course, and then
wow.
I didn't want to have like a customer service challenge on the other side where we couldn't
Uh-huh.
deal with them. So after a couple days, I was like, let's 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 stop and make sure we can serve these people. So that was a big win. Um,
Brilliant. That is
yeah.
so smart. And I remember this because being a Feisty ambassador this year, learning about
Mm.
all of that happening. Did another one launch, or are you waiting to do that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was sort
Okay.
of number two, which I'll try to be more more Also, I try to shorten
You
my
do you, Sarah.
spots here. But yeah, then when the second course was called Strong, and it was all about strength training, again, designed the same way so that people can understand exactly what strength training is doing for them,
Mhm.
how to fuel around their, around the program, how to mitigate injury and that kind of thing. So it was a whole course. It wasn't just a plan. Like, it wasn't just a structured strength training plan.
Yeah.
And that launch went better than the first one. So we were like, okay, yes, it's
Uh-huh.
good. And now we have our second cohort of Strong that's happening right now. And we're watching people. We created more of a community around this second launch of that course. And
Mhm.
that we've really learned that's the way to go. Like, create a community that are working through the materials together. And
Agreed.
then everybody's winning together. So yeah, so that was that's our second big way. I'm like thinking of a podium here, so that's why I picked
I love
three.
it.
And then the third one, if you're a triathlete, you'll appreciate this, but at the Ironman World Championship this year in Kona, we had the opportunity to do a pretty big, what would you call it, campaign, right?
Mhm.
So for the first time ever, women had the entire stage in Kona. There were no men racing because the men
Mhm.
had raced in Nice. A few weeks before. And so we had a bunch of really great partners on already. And then Ironman, we partnered with Ironman on some education events. So for me, having some education events and also some content surrounding those education events. And
Uh-huh.
for me, as someone I've been to Kona for 20 years, right? And in the expo at the Ironman World Championships, it's typically like the same people who are being interviewed on the stage, and they're doing these like either live podcast recordings, or back in the day it was just interviews.
Mhm.
Typically, Ironman's pretty good about including women, but typically there's more men than women on stage talking about the same things, rinse and repeat every year. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, we're going to be able to be on that expo stage, and we're going to talk about periods, and we're going to talk about perimenopause, and we're going to talk about like what to do if you have your period and you need to change your tampon on race day, or
Mhm.
whatever like some of those things are that were previously kind of missing in the conversation. um
Yes.
we're going to have this opportunity to fill in these blanks, and that was a massive moment for us as a business too, because we've been covering the Ironman World Championship for this was our 6th year. And so to have that partnership with Ironman, work with them, try to get that the conversation around women's performance and women's participation in
Mhm.
triathlon kind of more to the forefront, that was amazing.
I loved the panel. I watched the panel. One
Mm.
of my Betty sisters, Jen Temperley, was on there,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was so awesome. And the topics that I heard on that panel, I was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna say, like, let's throw this out there. It's really only women that listen to this anyway, and we don't care if guys are listening. They need to know this. But I do remember racing in Whistler once for
Mm-hmm.
Ironman, 70.3. And I remember coming back and having someone ask me, like, hey, you raced really well, but why were your transitions so slow?
Mm-hmm.
Which made me say things in my head, and B, I was like, well, if you really want to know, let's break
Yeah.
this down. I was hemorrhaging,
Mm-hmm.
right? And needed to take care of that. Like, what do you want me to go further? And so I think like those conversations they're a must. We've
Mm-hmm.
got we've got to be able to talk about how do you handle racing? And I love that everything has come to light in the racing world, in the competitive world, where we're talk about these things, and even outside of the competitive world, like just in the strength training world.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a client this morning I worked with who is just about to start a period, and I was like, okay, so we're changing the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that we can bring these things to light. And so it's Feisty that's done this too to make this more mainstream. So kudos to you guys. Those are
Yay.
great podium moments. And creating online content in courses. I've
Mm-hmm.
done it for the last few years. It takes a lot. It takes a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And it's just me doing it. So
Yep.
it's rough. So
Yeah.
well done. Well
Thank
done.
you. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and then
Mhm.
taking the customer service side is also a lot of work. So,
But you're
but
doing it smart.
we learned it. We've learned it. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
still learning.
Will you share with us too about what what is coming on the brink of 2024, because Feisty's got some cool stuff coming. So what's
Yeah.
up next?
Yeah. So the big project right now is our menopause course.
Mhm.
And it's called Navigate Menopause. And essentially Celine Yeager, who hosts Hit Play Not Pause, which is our biggest podcast, our menopause podcast, and it's very popular. And so Celine's kind of our guide through. Are we bringing in the experts, sort of like we do with the podcast, but we're bringing them in for a specific topics,
Mhm.
and guiding folks through like how to navigate perimenopause, like that time of life that starts typically somewhere in your 40s and
Mhm.
can be really challenging for people at all kinds of levels. And especially if you're an active person, the information just isn't out there. So we've essentially made this course that's it's kind of like a guidebook that everyone's going to work through together to create their own plan based on the symptoms that they're having. And I think it's going to be really, really cool. I think I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, the bulk of 4 out of 9 of the modules.
Okay.
I've seen them already, and I can just tell this is going to be just a great course and a great community to be part of. So that's a thing that we're most excited about.
And so needed.
Yeah, so that launches mid-January. So right now it's like we're in the thick of the work with it, and we just had a call today about how we're going to work with the cohorts in that course, like
Okay.
how much, yeah, and how we're providing the most value for the people who want to like work with other people through the materials, and want to have
Mhm.
that kind of support, or how we're going to deal with all the questions that people are going to have, etc. So we're just figuring out that right now. So that's the big one.
Okay.
And
Fantastic.
we're also doing a what is it called? The Feisty Business Accelerator, which is like near and dear to my heart because I love working with other entrepreneurs, and even just sharing my story and helping people in any way that I can from everything I've learned over the last 6 years. So that's essentially what we're doing. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina on January 4th and 5th, and it's right ahead of the USA Triathlon, their conference, which is called Endurance Exchange.
Mhm.
So basically, the CEO of USA Triathlon was like, there's a lot of women in this category of like they run their own coaching companies, or they have they're race directors, they own races on the side, but they really want to make those kinds of things their full-time gig. And so we're really trying to support those people and help them understand some of like even the practical skills that you need to be able to build a social media following, build a website,
Mhm.
trust your own instincts, network with the right people. So all of these kinds of things that like every entrepreneur, especially at the beginning, needs to know. That's what
Mhm.
we're talking about there. So I'm excited.
That is so cool. So
Mhm.
cool. Is that filled up already?
No, not yet. We want a small group, but I
Yeah.
think we're capping at 50, and I think we're at 30 something. We're in the low 30s. So there's still
Okay.
space. Mhm.
Fantastic. I know that there's so many female entrepreneurs in this realm. So
Mhm.
many. And so this will come out soon enough. So I'll be sure to put that into show notes where people can get that information, and hopefully where they'll be able to register for the menopause course and everything else that you guys offer. You also have the Women's Performance podcast,
Mhm.
and that is a plethora of really great stuff. It's a mix of, education and entertainment.
Mhm.
It's lighthearted and it's great, which I love. So there's so many places for people to find this information. I am on a mission to help women age like a badass. It's part of what I live for. So it's all the things that you guys are teaching as well. And so I would love to share these references and materials and courses with the people I work with and the people I speak to. So I'll make sure to put all that good information in. What else do we want to know about Feisty that we haven't talked about? Direction that
Oh,
you're going in, anything that you want to share that you wish I would have asked you.
so yeah, one more thing to know is that like in 2023, we committed pretty hard to women's sports, like to covering women's sports. more and better and talking about it more. And that's our main Feisty Instagram, which is Feisty_media. We sort of dedicated to like covering women's sports, which is slightly different to talking about hormones and some of the other things that we were doing. And so we have a newsletter that's called The Feist. And it's written by Kelly O'Mara for anyone. If you're a listener, if we were riding, she's kind of floated in and out of the Feisty world quite a lot. She's an excellent writer. And from the time we launched, we got so many emails. I love this newsletter. Thank you for doing this. So it's kind of everything that you want to know about women's sports, but it also covers the sports that we love too. Like it covers endurance sports, which is often missing with the focus being so much on ball sports and sports coverage in general.
Really?
So, you're not going to miss out on Ironman coverage. You're not going to miss out on cycling coverage or marathon running or any of that, but you're also going to have the information in there about like the stars of basketball and soccer. And then also the performance side, right? So if there's new research around how our hormones affect our performance, you're going to find it in that newsletter too. So it's a bit of everything for everybody. But it's all the things I think we want to know as women who are still active. So we're assuming, and it's proven to be right so far, that it's what people want to know. So that's at thefeistnews.com, and you can just sign up for the newsletter. And it comes out every Tuesday morning.
Ooh, it's weekly.
It's weekly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that was like it was one of those things where I can see that everything in women's sports is changing, right? Like there's more money being put into it. There's more media coverage. It's changing rapidly. And I thought, you know what? We really want to be part of this. We have this great writer in Kelly. Like, let's just start a women's sports newsletter and see where it goes. And we've got close to 17,000 people on that email list, and we have really great open rates, and we hear from people every week. So yeah, it proved to be a good move.
Yeah, that is a success. So cool too. And it's about time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not that there are other outlets just covering women's sports, but I think there's lots of space for lots of variety in how things are covered and lots of different storytelling and, lots of different angles. So I'm super excited to be part of that moving forward too.
Yeah. Congrats on that. Love it all. Okay. My last question for you, Sara, what makes you feel like a badass?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say to that one, I'm going to say lifting heavy shit. Right. Like, so because I was a triathlete for so long, I was like 42 years old and I wandered into a CrossFit gym and I don't think I had done strength training before, of course, as part of my triathlon career, but I didn't really realize how empowering strength training is and how empowering it is to know you weigh around a barbell. And what, and just kind of the joy that comes from that and the feeling of being physically strong. So that's been a big part of my journey because that's kind of been alongside, like I'm 47 now. So that whole journey into strength training has kind of run parallel to my like entrepreneurial journey with Feisty, and it's been so empowering.
I love that so much. So much. I wish every woman felt what that feels like.
Me too. The other great thing about strength training, if anyone's thinking about it or thinking about committing like a little bit harder to it, is that you're not exhausted the way you are with endurance training, right? Which was kind of precisely what I needed in a moment where I need to focus on my business, right? Doing endurance training, you're just more tired all the time, right? Now that I'm in my 40s, like late 40s, I'm like, if I was doing 3-hour bike rides every weekend, that would be a lot more tiring than doing good lifting sessions. So I still do. Yeah. Like, and I still do endurance exercise and I still do like cardio, quote unquote, but like not to the extent.
Well, part of that's not going to leave you. That's in your blood,
That's true.
And it's therapy. So and it's like, it's just, we know that dopamine response we get from a long run, but you're completely 100% right on how it taxes you. Yeah. And it's just not quite the same.
Exactly. It's nice to have something that makes you feel immediately just like stronger, more connected with your body to get on with your day. So.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And aren't you like truly inspired by what we're seeing in social media of these 80 and 90-year-old women who are lifting, and some of them are lifting heavy shit. And it's so inspiring to like you're never too old. And you're
Yeah.
also never too young. Like I look at my daughter's 24 and I look at like, if I were a 24-year-old knowing what I know now, oh my gosh, would it be so different?
Yeah. No,
You know?
exactly. I'm always heartened by, again, in the CrossFit gym, like seeing some of the young people who are still like in their late teens who actually have learned how to do a clean and jerk
Yeah.
as a teenager, you
Yeah.
know, where like I learned when I was 42. Like that's, you know, I love seeing that. And I love seeing them get super strong, like into their early
Yeah.
20s too.
Totally. Totally. Well, we'll
Yeah.
just keep inspiring, you know, women from every nook and cranny of the world at every age to
Mhm.
do all the things and feel badass. I'm so
Exactly.
glad that you came on today. This was like a real treat, and it will be for my listeners too, because you are just such a baller. And I encourage you to keep going like full throttle, because it's so important that we know all these things and that we have this community. That was another thing I wanted to say, you know, with your courses and stuff, like, yes, the community is really important.
It really is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
so connected.
Definitely. Well, thank you
Yeah.
too, Heather. Thank you for having such great energy. I love it.
Oh,
You make talking really easy. So.
oh, thank you. Thank you. It's the comms major in me. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sara. You guys can find all of the information about everything Feisty, everything that they put out in the show notes. And we'll catch you next week on the Badass Reset Club.